Hello and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 31st March 2026, brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we'll be looking into the 7 set of current affairs issues which are featured on today's newspaper. The handout of this very discussion has been pinned in the comment section below for a future reference. Beginning with the analysis section, in the first topic, we'll try and understand that why there's a need to carry out the delimitation exercise in order to uphold the democratic principles, and at the same time, what are the concerns raised by the southern states in this respect. Moving on to the second topic, as 31st March marks the deadline of the milestone that we have set for ourselves to create a Naxal-free India. Now, an editorial has appeared in this respect, which talks about this particular aspect, that what needs to be done next in order to make sure that we preserve this hard-earned security gains that we have made over a period of time. Moving on to the prelim pointer segment, herein we'll be covering the 5 set of current affairs issues which are more relevant from prelim's perspective. So, we'll be doing the value addition which would be relevant for your upcoming prelims examination. So, stay tuned. So, beginning with the first topic, which is dealing with the delimitation exercise, which we are going to do once the census data is in picture. Now, this particular topic you can associate with GS paper 2, that is issues and challenges related to federalism in India. Now, why we are discussing this particular issue? Because recently central government gave the proposal that we will be increasing the number of Lok Sabha seats. Okay, for every state there would be 50% blanket increase across all states. Now, this has been opposed by the southern states because they have this perception that this ultimately would be favoring the northern states. Okay. Now, what we need to understand is, what is this delimitation exercise all about? So, delimitation exercise is done after every census, wherein we divide a particular state into different electoral constituencies, and when we do this fixing of the boundaries of territorial constituencies or electoral constituencies, what we have to make sure is the ratio of the seats divided by the population of that particular territorial constituency is more or less equal to the ratio of seats and population in other territorial constituencies. And this is something that we should try to ensure when it comes to states also. That's what the constitution says, that when it comes to allocation of seats to the states in the Lok Sabha, that should be in proportion to the population of the concerned state. And why this is being done? In order to make sure that every voter, every vote, irrespective of in which state you live, carries same weight. Okay. Now, when it comes to this delimitation exercise, it is carried out by a delimitation commission, which is created by the parliament through Article 82. So, after every census, the parliament would be enacting a delimitation commission act, and that would lead to creation of delimitation commissions. And since independence, we have created this delimitation commission 4 times. Okay, that is in 1952, 63, 73 and 2002. On this, UPSC has already asked a prelims question in this respect. And when it comes to the delimitation exercise for the state legislative assembly elections, that is to be done under Article 170, and that is again done by the delimitation commission only. Now, when you talk about the composition of this delimitation commission, so it has a Supreme Court judge who is a retired judge of the Supreme Court, plus you have the Chief Electoral Commissioner, and you also have the respective state election commissioners. Okay, so I'll repeat. You have the chairman, that is the retired Supreme Court judge, then you have the Chief Election Commissioner, and you have the respective state election commissioner. And when it comes to the appointment, that is done by the President in accordance or in consultation with the Election Commission of India. Now, Constitution says that the allocation of seats to the Lok Sabha should be in accordance with the population. But, you know, in 1970s, we saw this thing that the population is increasing, and that time there was a threat that we might be witnessing a population explosion, okay, because population was increasing at a rapid rate. So, to incentivize the states so that they control the population, the government came up with the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, which actually froze the allocation of seats when it comes to different states in the Lok Sabha till the year 2000 at the population census data of 1971. Let me break this down in simple terms. It simply means that let's suppose there is a state A. So, according to the population census data, okay, the population data which is provided by the census of 1971, according to that, we have given, let's suppose, 20 seats to the state A. Now, what this 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act is precisely saying is, till 2000, does not matter whether the state reduces the population, then also it would continue to enjoy these 20 seats in the Lok Sabha. But what the constitution says, that the seat should be allocated to each state in proportion to the population. But in order to incentivize the states that they control the population growth rate, we gave them the assurance that controlling the population growth rate would not lead to any political loss for you. Okay, that would only incentivize the states to control the population. Okay, and that was done by the southern state. It actually worked. Then what the 84th Constitutional Amendment Act said this, that the state A would continue to have this 20 seat only in the Lok Sabha till 2026, that is this year. And now when it comes to drawing the electoral constituencies, when it comes to a particular state, now this drawing or fixing of the boundaries of territorial or electoral constituencies would be done on the basis of the population data which is provided by 1991 census. So this simply means the state A would continue to enjoy 20 seats in the Lok Sabha, but when it comes to redrawing the boundaries of the territorial constituency within the state A, that would be done by using the population data provided by 1991 census. Okay, this state would continue to enjoy 20 seats till 2026. No change is going to happen. And when it comes to 87th Constitutional Amendment Act, it simply said that now the redrawing of the boundaries of territorial constituencies when it comes to a particular state, that would be done using the population figure which is provided by 2001 census. Okay, so that is what the different Constitutional Amendment Act actually imply. Now, if you are following the newspaper today itself, it has come up that by 2027 we will be having the data with respect to the census, because census exercise has already begun. Now, once the census exercise would come into picture, then only this delimitation exercise would begin. And that is why time and again you are seeing that one or the other article is coming with respect to delimitation exercise, because the southern states have this concern that if we go by what the constitution says, that is the seats should be allocated to different states in the Lok Sabha in accordance to their population, that would go against the political interest of the southern states. But in the first aspect, we'll try to understand that why this delimitation is needed, why you need to carry out this. First and foremost, until and unless you don't carry out this delimitation exercise, once the census data is in public domain, we will not be able to give effect to the women reservation that we have provided under 106th Constitutional Amendment Act, which intends to provide 33% or 1/3 of the seats in the Lok Sabha as well as state legislative assemblies. The Act clearly states that we will be giving effect to this women reservation only and only once the delimitation exercise is done after the census data which is being carried out currently is in public domain. So until and unless you don't carry out this delimitation exercise, we will not be able to give effect to women reservation. And you know, when it comes to India, the political representation of women is quite less as compared to the global average. Then, if you don't carry out the delimitation exercise, it is also impacting the political interest of the ST and SC community. Because Article 330, Clause 2 of the Indian Constitution clearly states that the seats should be reserved for SC and ST elected representatives in accordance to their population in a respective state and UT. So if you don't carry out the delimitation exercise, we will not be able to uphold what is stated in this article. We will not be able to ensure that the seats which are reserved for SC and ST is in accordance with their population in that respective state or UT. And this is something which is highlighted by the Bihar Caste survey also, that since 2011 census, we have witnessed an increment in the ST and SC population. So if you want to make sure that the representation, political representation of SC and ST is in accordance with their population in the respective state or UT, you need to carry out the delimitation exercise, because delimitation exercise also decides that how many seats needs to be reserved for the ST and ST category. Then, if you don't carry out the delimitation exercise, what we are witnessing is we are violating this one man, one vote, one value. Because what does the constitution says? That irrespective of where you belong to, which state you belong to, your vote would have equal weightage. But that is being negated, because we have fixed that state A would continue to have 20 seats irrespective of the fact that the population figure has gone down. And this is leading to issue of mal-apportionment. That means one MP in UP is representing more population as compared to one MP in Kerala. So that is a violation of this democratic principle. So that means the weightage of vote of a man in UP is less as compared to the weightage of a man in Kerala, because one MP is representing less number of people. Then it also creates issue with respect to how the MP would be able to address the concerns of their constituency, because if one MP is representing more number of people, it becomes difficult for that MP to understand the concerns of so many people and effectively deliver them at the forum of Lok Sabha. Okay, so that is getting impacted. If you see in India, one MP is representing 2.2 million people, whereas in USA, one elected representative is representing less than 1 million people. So it is also going to impact how the elected representative is going to uphold or to showcase the concerns of his or her respective electoral constituency if he or she is representing more number of people. Then, in order to uphold electoral integrity and governance, delimitation process needs to align representation with the new demographic reality, and that is the reason why delimitation exercise was stated in the constitution also, that we need to make sure that every time you're drawing the boundaries of the electoral constituency and you are fixing the seats of respective states in accordance with their population, so that we uphold the idea of one vote, one value, irrespective of the state where you belong to. Okay. Now, what are the concerns which the states have raised in this respect? First and foremost, this is very much clear that if we go by the population figure, if we use the current population figure, southern states have played a remarkable role when it comes to reducing the population growth rate, whereas the northern states have not done good in this respect. So ultimately, we are penalizing the southern states for governance, good governance. But when it comes to northern states, they are going to make a political gain despite not controlling their population effectively. So the experts have pointed out that already we have a cultural fault between the northern and the southern states because of the three language issue, okay, wherein the southern states have this concern that through this three language formula, the central government is trying to impose Hindi language on them. So already there is a cultural fault between the southern and the northern states, and if we carry out the delimitation exercise keeping in mind the current population, then it is going to further widen this north-south divide. Another concern which the southern states have raised is they are the one who contribute more to the India's GDP, and they are the one who have made great achievement when it comes to controlling the population growth rate. So why they are being penalized for this? Okay, so that is another concern. Then if we carry out the delimitation exercise keeping in mind the current population, it is the states like UP and Bihar which have higher population, they would be getting a political gain, whereas the states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu and basically the southern states who have performed well, they would be making a political loss. So their voice when it comes to the platform of Lok Sabha, that would go down because the numbers would go down. And as I told you, this is like discouraging them for something good they have done. They have controlled the population and prevented the situation of population explosion in India. But then also we are penalizing them by reducing the number of seats that they'll be enjoying in the Lok Sabha. It also goes against the policy that we adopted previously. Previously the policy was that we have to control the population, but now we are making a shift from that. It might lead or fuel the tendencies of sub-regionalism, basically separatist tendency, because if the southern states and the northeastern states which have lower population, if their representation would get impacted in the Lok Sabha, it might fuel the separatist tendency. Okay, they might feel neglected. And it could be disadvantageous to the regional parties also, regional political parties, because they have hold, maybe the southern regional political parties, they have more hold in the southern states. And if the number of seats of southern states is going to reduce, ultimately the voice of the southern states, the voice of the political parties of the northeastern states, that would be dampened. And we'll see that the more political power would be concentrated in the hands of the northern states. Okay, that is what is the concern highlighted by the southern states. Now, what is the compromise that we can do here? How we can balance that we ensure this democratic principle of one vote, one value, and at the same time, we also maintain the federal balance. How do you do that? Let's look into that. First and foremost solution is Cambridge Compromise. So in European Union, what they have done is they increase the size of parliament and the state legislatures instead of readjusting the seats altogether. So we'll not be adjusting the seats that you enjoy. Okay, so we'll just keep on increasing the seats that are there instead of changing the allocation of seats to different states. Another thing that we can do is we can ensure equal representation of the states in the Rajya Sabha. Okay, that is something which we see in case of US also. Every state is supposed to send 2 senates there, and the same thing that we can apply in case of India also. If you are creating a kind of political laws for the southern states and the northeastern states when it comes to Lok Sabha, by doing the delimitation exercise, keeping in mind the current population, let's give them more political power when it comes to Rajya Sabha at least. Okay. So this should be done irrespective of the population, and this was something which was recommended by Punchi Commission also. Then another suggestion is approach of concessionary federalism. Concessionary federalism is if you are creating a sort of laws for the southern states in one aspect, let's give them some favor in some other domain. Okay, so what the experts have pointed out that when it comes to the Finance Commission, so 15th Finance Commission, as you can see here, it gave 15% weightage to population, and when it comes to the 16th Finance Commission, it increased this weightage to 17.5%. And here we are using 2011 census, which goes against the interest of the southern states again. So the experts point out that let's just reduce this weightage to maybe 10% or 5%. So that if they have to make a loss when it comes to their representation of the Lok Sabha, let's give them some favor when it comes to the devolution of the divisible pool when it coming from the central government, and this is to be decided by the Finance Commission. So therein we can reduce the weightage allocated to the population parameter. Okay, so this would enable that the southern states would get more share of the divisible pool from the central government. That is something that we can do. Or we can go for harmonizing principle, that is you cap, you don't change the seats that you have when it comes to Lok Sabha. What you do is, in order to uphold the democratic principles, you increase the number of seats in the state legislative assemblies. That ways you will try to effectively balance the idea of upholding the democratic principle, one person, one value, okay, and at the same time we will also be able to ensure that the federal balance do not get distorted or disturbed. Or lastly, as today's editorial points out, that we can go for this weighted population development formula. So what it clearly says is that when it comes to deciding that what number of seats need to be allocated to a particular state, we can go with this population development weighted formula. So in this 70 to 80% weight needs to be given to the population, fine, but you also need to incentivize the southern states who have made great improvement when it comes to controlling the population. So you need to reward them by assigning 20 to 30% of the weightage to development indicators like literacy, health, controlling the fertility rate. Okay, so that is also another compromise that we can go for. That's it from my side when it comes to this particular topic. I have framed a practice question for you people. So based on the discussion that we have right now, please try and attempt this particular question. And with this, let's move on to the next topic. The present government has set a target that by 31st March 2026, we'll make India Naxal free. And today is that day. So an editorial has appeared in Indian Express which talks about that what more needs to be done so that we are able to preserve this hard-earned security gains and how we can convert it into lasting legitimacy. This particular topic you can associate with GS paper 3 and the challenges related to internal security, to be precise. Now, when it comes to this left-wing extremism, it basically started with the Naxalbari movement in the West Bengal, which took place in 1967, and this was a rebellion against a local landlord who has actually bashed a peasant over a land dispute. So slowly and steadily, this left-wing extremism impacted these states, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, Maharashtra, Kerala, West Bengal, and these states were considered to be a part of the Red Corridor. Now, what was the aim of this left-wing extremism movement? There were two aims. Firstly, to throw away a legitimate Indian state through an armed rebellion, and secondly, to put in place parallel governance structure. For example, you have the Janatana Sarkars in Gadchiroli region of Maharashtra. Now, what are the reasons why we saw a rise of left-wing extremism, which started with the Naxalbari movement in West Bengal and it slowly and steadily spread through a lot of states? What were the reasons? First and foremost is the ineffective implementation of Forest Rights Act. So, under this Forest Rights Act, tribal has been provided with the land titles, use rights when it comes to minor forest produce, and we also have to collaborate with the tribal community when it comes to conservation and preservation of the forest. But what we have seen is there is ineffective implementation of this particular act. If you talk about the state of Jharkhand, as has highlighted by the People's Archive of Rural India, which is a non-profit, organization working for the rights of the tribal communities, and it has also been pointed out by Ministry of Tribal Affairs that when you look at the state of Karnataka, it has the highest rejection rate when it comes to individual forest rights. And when it comes to Odisha, although it is performing well, but therein also we are seeing a high pendency rates, okay, when it comes to the FRA claims. So this is severely impacting the tribal rights over their own original land. Then another concern is development induced displacement. Now, when it comes to the tribal regions, they have good amount of water resources, they have huge mineral reserves, and that is the reason because of the hydel projects we are witnessing development induced displacement of the tribal people. If you take the example of or the case study of Malkangiri in Odisha, therein tribal communities was displaced twice. One because of the Jalaput dam project and other because of the Balimela dam project. And time and again because of the mining projects which are created in this tribal region, because they have huge reserves of mineral deposits, we witness development induced displacements. Okay, and that is the reason when it comes to this left-wing extremism, it is basically a fight to preserve jungle and Jameen. Okay. Then because of this development induced displacement, their livelihood gets severely impacted, because when it comes to tribal communities, they are yet not able to access the modern quality education, and they are the people who prefer living in harmony with the nature. Okay, so they are able to make their livelihood through minor forest produce, but when you take away their use titles, when you do not give them the land titles, ultimately from where they are going to earn the money. And this deprivation actually creates a fertile ground for the Naxals. When it comes to the case study of Gadchiroli district of Maharashtra, what we saw there is, according to the PISA Act, that is Panchayati Raj Extension to the Scheduled Area Act, you are supposed to take the consent of the Gram Sabha when it comes to giving effect or approving the mining projects in tribal areas. But that was severely violated when it comes to the Surajgarh iron ore mine project, which came up in the Gadchiroli district of Maharashtra, and that severely impacted the livelihood, because that deteriorated the forest resources around this particular mining project, and the tribal people were also not provided with adequate jobs also. And we saw vehemently violation of PISA Act, and that is the reason the Zaza committee has pointed out that when it comes to the administration, we see the tribal regions not as self-governing spaces, what we intend to provide them under the PISA Act. Rather, we see them as administrative territories. That means we are not giving enough say to the Gram Sabha when it comes to deciding that whether a particular developmental project should be created in the tribal region or not. We are not taking into account that how a developmental project is going to negatively impact the livelihood and the rights of the tribals when it comes to the forest resources. And when it comes to the Naxals who have surrendered, we are not ensuring their effective rehabilitation and their reintegration with the main society, because we are not providing them adequate skill set so that they can effectively integrate with the mainstream society. Rather, the Naxals who have actually surrendered, they have become dependent upon whatever money which is coming from the government, and they are under constant surveillance and they are living a life of fear. So these are the problems which has made the tribal disillusioned with democracy, and there are various corruption instances also when it comes to implementation of PDS and all. So because of this, we saw rise in left-wing extremism in India. Now, what all steps the government has taken to ensure that by 2026, India become Naxal free? So we focused upon modernization of our police forces. So under this, the government made security related expenditure scheme. Okay, we had the scheme wherein we spended immensely when it comes to training of the security forces and enhancing the operational needs of the security forces, rehabilitation of surrendered left-wing extremism cadres. We fortified the police stations. Currently, more than 600 fortified police stations are there, so that the police stations do not become a target of the Naxals. We have the special infrastructure scheme wherein we are focusing on strengthening the state intelligence branches, because from the local areas you are able to get the real intelligence input. Then we also focused upon skill development and education. So education, we are focusing upon Eklavya model residential schools wherein we are trying to provide quality education to the tribal students. We have come up with the industrial training institutes and skill development centers in order to ensure effective reintegration, rehabilitation of the Naxal who have surrendered. Then we have the Samadhan doctrine wherein S stands for smart leadership. Smart leadership basically means dynamic leadership. We cannot allow bureaucratic delays. Then A stands for aggressive strategy. So there needs to be constant operations being carried out against the Maoist. Okay, and we cannot allow them to create a safe haven for themselves. Then M stands for motivation and training of the security forces like Cobra. A stands for actionable intelligence. How do you get real input from the local areas? D stands for dashboard based key performance indicators, wherein on the real time basis you'll get the performance, that how we are performing when it comes to education, health, and what is the number of operations that we have carried out, what was the casualty, all that figure you will be getting on a real time basis. Then H stands for harnessing the technology, drone technology, GPS technology, mine protected vehicles need to be put in place in order to carry out precise operation against the Naxals. A stands for action plan for each theatre. That means you cannot go with one size fits all approach for a district which is most affected by Naxalism and a district which is of concern. We need to come up with a tailored made approach for every district. And N stands for no access to financing. So we need to target the fake NGOs, cryptocurrencies, whatever other ways through which the Naxals are getting the financing, we need to stop that financing. And when it comes to the present government, it has went with this approach of zero tolerance approach when it comes to Naxalism. So it has basically focused upon ending the violent activities in the states which come under the red corridor, and at the same time it has also focused upon establishing the rule of law. We have also improved when it comes to the development indicators. We have also improved the infrastructure in these regions. For example, road connectivity has been improved. We came up with the aspirational district program wherein we are focusing upon 5 areas. One is education, the other one is health and nutrition, then agriculture and water, then financial inclusion, and lastly infrastructure. And here we are going with 3 C's approach, that is convergence, collaboration and competition. Convergence between the national and the state schemes, collaboration between the national level as well as the state level officers, and competition among different districts. Okay, so that is what we are doing under the aspirational district program. Then civic action program, wherein we are trying to show the humane face of security forces to the local population. And we are also focusing upon the media thing. We are improving the communication with the tribal areas so that we don't allow the Naxals to spread false propaganda against the government. Okay, so for this we have come up with the tribal youth exchange programs, radio jingles, documentary pamphlets, etc. So that by spreading false propaganda, the Naxals are not able to recruit innocent tribal youth. Okay, so that we are trying to work upon. So this is the improvement that we have seen when it comes to the Naxalism. So recently the Union Home Minister has replied at the floor of the Lok Sabha that we have brought down the Maoist affected district from more than 100 in 2014 to nearly Then there are 0 most affected district. We have fortified a lot of police stations. Then we have come up with night landing helipad created. So we have focused upon the technology aspect also. So these many Maoists have surrendered, these many are arrested and these many are killed. Now, a very important part is what more needs to be done so that we are able to preserve this hard earned security gain that we have made. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that withdrawal of Naxals should not lead to undesirable elements filling this space. Otherwise, we lose this hard-earned security gains. How do we ensure this? First and foremost, we need to ensure that there is no sudden thinning of uniform presence. Okay, there should not be sudden removal of the security forces from these left-wing affected areas. We need to follow a gradual approach. So as the forces pulls back, local should be recruited into the police forces and into the administration. New police station should be opened. Basically, we need to put in place an effective civic administration in place. We need to ensure that the bureaucracy is responsive rather than being reactive. So the goal is to replace the camp-centered, largely external security forces, footprints, with rooted institution wherein the schools functions effectively, there are health centers which are open, effective grievance redressal mechanism is there, and in the administration, those people are working for whom the forests are their home and not a temporary postings, okay, just like external security forces employees that are there, okay. When it comes to the security forces personals, they are not belonging to these particular regions. So when it comes to bureaucracy, we need to make sure that the locals are made a part of the bureaucracy so that we have those people in the administration for whom the forests are their home and for them this is not a temporary posting, okay. That would enable the administration to connect better with the local people. Then we need to come up with a tribal centric governance, because you need to understand that a movement would die as and when the ideology hollows out. So what is the ideology on which these Naxals were able to recruit so many youths? Fight against Jal, Jungle and Jameen to protect these rights. But if you ensure these rights are available to the tribal people, you will not see rise of left-wing extremism any further. For that, you need to ensure that there is effective implementation of PESA as well as Forest Rights Act. Forest Rights Act would make sure that they have adequate, the tribal population have access to the land titles, they are able to use the minor forest produce and they play a remarkable role when it comes to conservation of their forest, okay. And when it comes to PESA, we need to make sure that we effectively implement this provision of PESA, that Gram Sabha's consent should be taken whenever we are planning to put in place a development project in these areas, okay. We need to ensure that these tribal areas are considered as self-governed regions, okay. So for that, effective implementation of PESA is needed and we need to ensure that whatever powers have been given to the Gram Sabha under the PESA Act are followed effectively. Then we need to go for participatory development budgeting, taking care of the developmental needs of this particular areas. Then we need to ensure that rehabilitation and effective reintegration of the Naxal cadres who have surrendered needs to be ensured so that they again do not pick up arms. We need to skill them, we need to provide them the new age skill set so that they effectively get integrated into the mainstream economy and the society. Then you need to leverage the technology for ensuring that the governance is tribal centric and we are able to improve the developmental indicators there. So for that, we can go for geotagging of whatever assets we are creating under the MG Narega. You can ensure effective implementation of CP grams, wherein you can register any grievance that you have against any government department or ministry. So grievance redressal mechanism needs to be effective. We can ensure effective implementation of DigiLocker, which would ensure effective verification of the documents and accordingly it would ensure effective implementation of the welfare schemes that the government planned for this particular area. So all over, you need to ensure that the development indicators improve, the governance improve, the bureaucracy is responsive, then only we will be able to secure the hard-earned security gains that we have made till now. Otherwise, if there is relative deprivation and you allow that relative deprivation to continue, this would create a fertile ground again for the Naxalism ideology to get a foothold in these regions. That's it when it comes to this particular topic. So I have framed a practice question for you people. So based on the discussion that we have, please try and attempt this particular question. With this, let's move on to the prelim pointer segment. So now, beginning with the prelim pointer segment, the first topic is related with the Artemis mission of NASA. Now, when it comes to Artemis second mission that the NASA is planning to launch by 1st of April this year, this is reflecting more of a society. Why? Because the astronauts which would be boarding this Artemis second mission would include a woman astronaut also and a non-white person as well. Now, this particular topic is related with the science and tech section of your prelim syllabus. Let's understand further about this Artemis mission. So, it is a lunar mission related to moon, and it intends to establish humanity's long-term presence on the moon. It intends to send astronauts around the moon, making humanity's return to the crude, deep space exploration that last time we did when it comes to Apollo 17 mission of 1972. Now, to effectively implement the 4 parts of Artemis mission, we have Artemis 1, 2, 3 and 4. Currently, we are planning to launch this Artemis second mission. NASA has partnered with 3 other space agencies, that is European Space Agency, Japan as well as Canadian Space Agency. Now, when it comes to Artemis first mission, this was an uncrewed test flight wherein we use the Orion spacecraft, which is a reusable crewed spacecraft. And we also use the Space Launch System rocket, which is a super heavy lift expandable launch vehicle, which is developed by NASA only. What do I mean by expendable? That means this launch system rocket can be used only once, and once it is re-entering again towards the earth, you need to destroy its component, okay, or you need to discard it in the space itself. Now, currently we are talking about Artemis second mission, so it would be the first crewed flight test around the moon since what we did it in 1972. The crewed Orion spacecraft will perform a flyby test. Flyby test means it would be just passing around the moon. There would be no landing on the moon. Landing on the moon has been planned under Artemis third mission, which the NASA has planned that it would be doing it by 2028. Okay, so this is going to be the first crewed Artemis mission, which intends to bridge the gap between Artemis 1 and Artemis third mission, wherein we are planning to do landing on the moon. And it intends to place first woman astronaut and non-white person on the moon. That is why it is significant. So, what is the purpose of this particular mission? So, it has to collect the data when it comes to functioning of the Orion spacecraft. Okay, so that we are able to successfully implement or launch the Artemis third mission, which intends to do lunar landing, and therein also we are planning to use this Orion spacecraft. Further details about this particular moon mission as provided by today's article. This is going to last for 10 days and you will be having 4 astronauts, one would be woman, one would be a non-white person also. So, it is expected to lift off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida on 1st of April. After the launch, this Orion crew capsule will separate from the rocket's upper stage and enter a highly elliptical orbit around the Earth. Now, when it would be orbiting the Earth in this high Earth orbit, it would be observing that how this Orion spacecraft is functioning. And once the checkouts are complete, then it would enter a trans-lunar injection, okay, sending the spacecraft out of the gravitational force of the Earth orbit and it would enter into a trajectory towards the moon. Or that is what is lunar injection. Then around the moon, they will just fly by the moon, they will not do landing on the moon, and once it would pass behind the moon on a free return trajectory, a path that naturally swings the spacecraft back towards the Earth without requiring any additional propulsion. And once it would be returning to the Earth, the Orion spacecraft approaches the Earth, it would separate key components and the spacecraft is expected to splash down in the Pacific Ocean. Okay, that's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, the Registrar General and the Census Commissioner of India has pointed out that the census data would be available by 2027. This particular topic you can associate with the polity section of your prelim syllabus. Now, what further details the Registrar General and the Census Commissioner of India has given us? They have told us that this is going to be conducted digitally, and it is also going to collect the data with respect to the caste, and for the first time we have allowed the people to go for self-enumeration. So you can enter the details through mobile as well as laptop, and they have created a self-enumeration portal also, which would be available in 16 languages. This window for self-enumeration would be available 15 days before the first phase of the census. And once you have entered all the detail through the self-enumeration thing, then whatever data you have entered, that would be verified through door-to-door visits also. Now this option to go for self-enumeration is given only to the people who are residing, that means living in India, to avoid any data manipulation. Now the Census Act of 1948, which actually regulates this entire census exercise, clearly states that whatever data the census is collecting, it is confidential, and only aggregate data is released. Individual data could not be provided to the judiciary or to the states, and it also does not come under the ambit of the RTI Act. This is something important that you need to know from prelims perspective. The census data cannot be used to provide reservation benefits also. Now certain data which has come up with respect to the census that is being carried out is, the Registrar General as well as the Census Commissioner of India has pointed out that since 2011 we have seen a decrease in the number of villages in India, and at the same time we have seen an increase in urban settlements in India. Okay, that is the data that is available right now. Now what we need to understand from our prelims perspective is, what is the difference between census, caste census and caste survey. Now when it comes to census, it is carried out under the Census Act of 1948. Right now we looked into this, and it is a process wherein the officials collect, compile and analyze the demographic, economic and social data of all the persons in a country at a specific period of time. It is conducted in India at a regular interval of 10 years. And when it comes to the census, this is a part of the Union list according to Article 246 of the Indian Constitution. Now when you talk about the caste census, this involves collecting the caste identity related data of individual, and this needs to be done during a national census. That is something that we are doing currently. Now it aims to gather the data on socio-economic status, education level and other demographic details of various caste groups within the population. Caste census is not backed by any particular specific statute. Okay, this is something that you need to make note of. Census has the legal backing through the Census Act of 1948, but when you talk about the caste census, you do not have any legal backing. Central government by notification may provide that the caste data would also be collected. That is something that we are doing in the current census exercise. Now every census in the independent India, which was done from 1951 to 2011, that was the last census we conducted, and there was a delay because of the COVID-19 pandemic and all, has published the data when it comes to SC and ST tribe, but not the caste related details when it comes to other categories. And before that, it is the census data of 1931, which is the last census wherein we have the data available with respect to all the caste. In between, we carried out the socio-economic caste census, okay, in 2011. This was done based on the recommendation of the group of ministers, which was headed by the then Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee in 2010, and it was, this exercise was done, but the data was never put into the public domain because there was huge concerns with respect to data accuracy and consistency. And this is the same concerns that were highlighted when the government decided that the current census would also be collecting the caste related details. Okay, this is the same concern, that because two castes might be having, a little bit of difference in name, that could lead to inaccuracy when it comes to data collection also. When it comes to caste survey, this is done by the respective state governments. Why? Because we studied right now, census is a subject in the union list. Okay, so states cannot carry out census. So what they carried out is caste survey, through which they are trying to collect the caste related details of the people who are living in that respective state. And this has been done by Bihar, Karnataka and Telangana recently. And you need to make note of this thing, that there is no legal backing for this caste survey thing also. And why the states are doing this? In order to get better data with respect to the different caste which is there in their respective state, and accordingly they can plan their welfare policies. They can ensure that the welfare policies are more targeted in their approach. Okay, that's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, keeping in light the West Asian crisis which is currently going on, Israel and US constantly attacking Iran. In this particular backdrop, Iran Parliament is considering the option to exit from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. They have pointed out that what is the benefit of being a part of such treaty when we are seeing bullying from various countries like USA and Israel. Tehran would respect the treaty as long as it is a member, and it has also pointed out that the nuclear program which is being done by Iran is for peaceful purposes. As a signatory of this Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, it has the right to do peaceful nuclear enrichment programs also, okay, which it is currently doing under Fordo nuclear site. So, constantly its nuclear facilities are being attacked by USA and Israel. So, in this particular backdrop, Iran Parliament is now thinking that they should exit from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So, this becomes important from a prelims point of view. So, we will be understanding that what are the prelim pointers related to this particular treaty. So, you need to make note of this thing that in 2025, this treaty has completed 55 years because it was approved by the UN General Assembly way back in 1968, but it came into force in 1970. When it comes to this particular treaty, it is the only multilateral binding treaty for the nuclear weapon states to go for this goal of disarmament while promoting peaceful nuclear use. What are the key provisions of this particular treaty? So, it defines the nuclear weapon states as the states which has the nuclear warheads, weapons before 1st January 1967. So, we have 5 nuclear weapon states, that is US, UK, France, China and Russia. And the non-nuclear states, they have agreed that they would not be developing any nuclear weapon, and whatever nuclear energy they will be using, that would be for peaceful purposes. And when it comes to the nuclear weapon states, they have pledged when it comes to this particular treaty that they would not allow transfer of this nuclear weapon or nuclear technology, okay, to the states who are actually non-nuclear states. And it allows for peaceful use of the nuclear energy and provides the withdrawal option also to states if they think that their national security is being threatened. When you talk about the membership, it has 191 members with 5 nuclear weapon states. India is not a member of this particular treaty. This is something you need to make note of, because India says that why are you having this discriminatory approach? Why we are giving some special privileges to the nuclear weapon states, and why the nuclear warheads are not to be given, or the non-nuclear weapon states are not supposed to hold any nuclear weapon. This is discriminatory, okay? You are creating a discriminatory approach, you are adopting a discriminatory approach when it comes to nuclear haves and nuclear have-nots. That is the reason India has not signed and it has not become a member of this particular treaty, because of its discriminatory approach. Then, under this, the International Atomic Energy Agency has to do inspection on a regular basis that whether a particular country is in compliance with this Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty or not. Now, this agency was created way back in 1957 under the UN to promote peaceful use of nuclear energy and nuclear technology, and the review of this particular treaty is done every 5 years. That's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, previously a trial court has provided acquittal to Arvind Kejriwal. In this particular backdrop, Enforcement Directorate has went to High Court against the acquittal given to the Arvind Kejriwal by the trial court. This particular topic you can associate with prelims, that is the regulatory bodies or the polity part. Now, when it comes to Enforcement Directorate, it becomes important because in 2025, UPSC has asked about this particular body. So, this is a multidisciplinary organization which has been given this power that it has to investigate the cases which are related to money laundering and violation of foreign exchange laws. It was established way back in 1956 as an enforcement unit under the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance. Later on in 1957, just 1 year later, the unit was renamed as Enforcement Directorate, which is the present name of this particular organization. And the administrative control was transferred from Department of Economic Affairs to Department of Revenue, which is under Ministry of Finance. It has its headquarters in New Delhi. Now, when it comes to this particular organization, it has been given this power that it has to enforce these 4 key acts. One is Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Under this, it has given the power that ED can confiscate the proceeds of crime after conviction, and one unique feature of this particular act is the burden of proof must be on the person who is accused. Okay, so reversal of burden of proof, accused must prove the legitimacy of the attached asset. Let's suppose ED says that I am the one who is entering into money laundering, so I have to give this proof that whatever asset you are saying, this I have created through legitimate monetary sources. Okay, this is not an asset which I have created through money laundering. So burden of proof lies on me, not on the ED. Then another acts that it has to enforce is FEMA, Fugitive Economic Offenders Act, wherein it has been given the power that it can attach and as well as confiscate the properties of offenders who have fled from India after committing economic offences to avoid prosecution. And then it also has to enforce this Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Act of 1974. That's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Recently, Russia is pleased to tell to the world that the oil vessels that they have sent to their ally country, that is Cuba, it has reached safely there. And this is the first shipment of oil that has reached to Cuba after the blockade enforced by US and after the US has abducted Venezuelan president as well as the Cuban ally, Nicolas Maduro. But US has stated that we don't care, okay. One boat of oil, if it reaches Cuba, that's not a matter of concern. What is important for us to know is certain film pointers related to this country, Cuba. This becomes important from a film's perspective, places in news. Now, when you talk about this country, Cuba, it is the largest island country which is situated in the northwestern Caribbean. And it is a meeting point of, here as you can see, Atlantic Ocean, Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean Sea. Its capital is Havana here, and Havana is the largest city of Cuba and it is also a major port and an important economic, commercial and industrial hub of Cuba as well. When you talk about Cuba, it has the third largest population in the Caribbean Sea after Haiti and Dominican Republic. When you talk about Cuba, it shares its maritime border with US, with Mexico, with Haiti, here you can see, with Jamaica, with Bahamas and Mexico. Okay, here it is, Honduras, etc. And what are the prominent rivers that you see in this particular country? So, Catu, Toa, Yumiri and Goma. And it also have important natural resources like cobalt, nickel, iron ore, petroleum, etc. And when you talk about the climate here, it is tropical, seasonally humid with maritime influences and semi-continental features because it is close to sea. So, obviously the temperature would be quite moderate, okay, because of the moderating effect of the sea there. So, here you have state of Florida, here you have Cayman Trench and here you have Cayman Islands of US. That's all that we need to know in today's analyst. Quiz would be coming up right up next. So don't forget to practice the quiz and check your knowledge, how far you were able to gain. Till then, keep smiling, keep learning. Have a great day all of you.